Let's record then. So hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Human as Fuck Legacy. Today I have the very, very beautiful Hannah Ann with me, and I am going to be asking you some questions. But to start off with, how would you best describe yourself in 5 words?
Oh, damn. Starting off strong. Okay, how would I best describe myself in 5 words? Okay, I would say definitely creative, courageous, take charge. I guess that's kind of 2 words. Philosophical, that's 4. And out of the box, that's also 3 words, but
Awesome.
dashes.
That's all right. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for those people who haven't had a chance to read your bio and all that kind of stuff that I posted in the group earlier, what is it that you're doing with yourself in your time these days? Because, I mean, we used to work together. So what's been happening since then?
Yeah, so much. Well, I mean, I guess I kind of have two lives in one. I have sort of 2 businesses, I guess you could say. So I'm an artist, singer-songwriter, as you know. I've been pursuing a career in music as an independent artist, singer-songwriter, and I'm also a business coach. So I work with heart-centered entrepreneurs and creatives, particularly in the transformational space. And so more recently, I mean, I've worked with entrepreneurs, as you know, for the last 5 years. And when we met, we were both doing some work together in that field. And so, yeah, just recently I started my own coaching business, I guess you could say, or a new chapter in my business where I'm now taking people through sort of a system that I've created, I guess you could say. Awesome. So that's, I guess, what I'm doing career-wise in its entirety.
Okay, so what sets you different, sets you apart from other people that are coaching in that space at this point in time?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the biggest thing is that I'm an artist. And so as a singer-songwriter, and I also am a copywriter. So my whole, I guess what you could say, my natural gifts are all in the gifts of communication. So writing, speaking, performing, being on stage, those are sort of where my natural gifts live. And, you know, it's interesting because when I launched my career as a singer-songwriter, that was really the missing piece for me, because that's where I really learned to take my storytelling to another level, because you're on a stage, you know, you have a whole audience that's watching you, and, you know, my music is quite emotive. It's very much like people need to be quiet, they're listening. And so, you know, you really have to learn how to connect and engage with an audience and really share stories that are engaging and meaningful. And so when I started Brand Alchemy, it was really about taking that emotive connection, on a really deep level, and applying that to, you know, the sort of more masculine driven strategies and kind of coaching industry a little bit. So I guess that's kind of the main thing. I think that sort of sets me apart.
That's so good. So, I mean, obviously the world's changed quite a bit in the last few months. So my question is for you is, what are you doing for fun right now?
What am I doing for fun? Yeah, it's a good question, because my normal fun would be going to the beach or hanging out in nature, but obviously can't really do that right now. So I'm playing a lot of games. There's been a lot of quarantine Zoom parties. So we've been connecting with friends and playing Jackbox TV.
Oh, nice.
Which is so fun. Yeah, so games. I mean, it's hard because I think I love writing music and all of that. That's also kind of work. So I think my fun sometimes does overlap with work a little bit. But just being creative in general, I think, is just super fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think one of the things that I've known about you since I very first met you was it was just this beautiful energy of this going where the wind takes you, and this passion and having this deeper driver. And I do know a little bit about your background and stuff like that. So can we go a little bit deeper into how you've come to be how you are, and who you are, and just give us a little bit of a rundown of your upbringing, because I find it quite amazing. I'd love your story.
My upbringing. Okay. Well, I'm Canadian, so we can start there, as maybe some people watching can tell from my accent. So I was born in like a really small town just outside of Montreal, Quebec, which is actually French Canada, but I'm not French. I don't really speak French, unfortunately. And we moved to like Toronto when I was 6, and that's kind of where I grew up. And yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very musical household. So I was always surrounded by music. You know, I took classical piano lessons, but I also grew up in a very academic household as well. And so one of the things that I sometimes say when I'm kind of like describing my story is like, I have the heart of an artist, but the mind of a philosopher. It's like this very sort of like, yeah, and my dad is a minister. And my mom is a teacher. So as you can imagine, growing up, it was like the family was always really engaged in these very deep philosophical conversations about life. And that's what I grew up with. So, you know, there'd be all these really deep conversations, and then there'd be my desire to be really creative. But there was also a lot of challenges in that because, you know, I had this propensity to be very creative, and I was very like much a big picture person, like big visions and all of these ideas, but I just didn't really know how to ground that. So I was really in my head. I was like daydreaming all the time. And eventually like that kind of gap, I guess you could say, between the visions and the big picture and what I could actually kind of create, or kind of figuring out how things work sort of on the earthly realm, if that makes sense. Like that gap kept growing and growing and growing. And it actually sent me into depression. And yeah, so then my parents divorced as well. And that was like a huge sort of trigger for me that kind of sent me spiraling in a pretty dark place. And that was probably most of my teenage years were in that place. But on the flip side of that, that was also how I developed my relationship with songwriting. It was out of that place of feeling just like so, I don't even know, just so done with life and like questioning everything. Like how does this even make any sense? Like questioning reality, questioning my existence. Like I felt inherently I was here for a purpose, and I just couldn't quite grasp what that was. And so I just felt, you know, forlorn and helpless. But it was songwriting that helped me connect with those emotions that I didn't really understand, and that helped me, I guess, climb my way out of that place eventually.
Yeah, nice. Nice. That's beautiful. So what is something that you're curious about right now? Like what's on your to-do list, or the things that are keeping you fascinated, or whatever else at this point in time?
That's a good question. A lot of things. A lot of things. I think where we are right now in the world is just so fascinating. And so, I mean, it's so exciting. And I say that, you know, with respect and with humbleness, because I understand that right now it's very challenging for a lot of people and there's a lot to navigate through. I think I went through a little bit of my identity crisis like last year and, you know, the years previously. So this for me feels almost like a bit of a piece of cake in comparison to some of the stuff that I've been through. I'm sure it's the same for you. So right now I'm just so curious to see how things are going to play out on a global scale and see what emerges from this time. And so I'm really just curious about that, and I'm really quite excited. And you know, there's a bit of nerves as well, because it's like really stepping into unknown territory in a new way. But then for me personally, that's also really exciting because I've already been in that space a little bit with music and with entrepreneurship and with all of that kind of stuff. And now I kind of feel that extra sort of drive to create, and really like there's no rules. Like there's no rules anymore.
Yeah. So good. So what do you see happening for you in the next 5 years, like dreaming ahead?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, what I would love to happen in the next 5 years, I would really love to build my presence out in the world, and really start to step out in a bigger way. So through whatever vehicle that is. Right now, that vehicle looks like my music, and it looks like, my business and my brand. But I'm open to how that evolves over the next 5 years. But I definitely see myself on the world stage in a bigger way. Like, I said to you, I've always been a performer since really young, and I've only recently really stepped back into that energy of being a performer and being on stage. And yeah, so I'm excited to see how that evolves. So that's definitely the direction I want to be headed into.
That's so awesome. Oh, I love that. I just love your music as well. So it's like just the impact that you can have from that. And just like I said, your heart's one thing that you can never bypass or dismiss. It's like if you've met Hannah, you've felt her heart before.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what are some of the challenges you think the next generation are going to be facing?
This is really interesting because my cousin actually just gave birth to twins today.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about the world that they're growing up into. I think the biggest challenge is that there is going to be a lack of inherent structure, which is good, but also it means, we kind of grew up where there was societal structure and there was sort of these systems, and we came into it and it's like, okay, this is the way it works. And then but then some of us were like, wait, but this is not, like, I'm not feeling this, right? But for the new generation, I think it's going to be a lot of those systems have collapsed, but the new systems haven't quite formed yet. And they're going to be the generation that's creating that. But that obviously comes with its inherent challenges as well.
I like that answer. Okay, so what's 3 of the habits that you do currently to improve your life?
Okay, meditation. I know that seems like the standard answer, but it's true.
When you say it.
Having a morning, like meditation and journaling for me, like every morning, have been like kind of my 2 grounding activities. And then a 3rd habit, I think probably making time to do nothing.
Yeah,
beautiful. I can't say I'm good at that habit yet, but it's something that it's on my list to improve.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So what's one thing, so if you could change one thing right now, what would you change?
About like the world? Or about
whatever you want it to be.
Change one thing right now. Okay, if I could change one thing right now. Oh, well, I guess I would have $1 million in the bank.
Awesome. Okay. This is a good answer. Can't be complaining about that. So what's something that you felt like you failed at that turned out to be a huge success? Or, hindsight, you had a different perspective?
Actually, I have a whole story around this. I mean, there's many things, many things, but one that's kind of a bit more recent. Last year, I took on a business contract where I was sort of co-creating some programs, contributing some of my IP. Long story short, I ended up being out, like the person on the other end didn't honor their agreement, and I ended up being out about like $8,000, or I was owed around $8,000. And at the time, for me, having invested everything into my music career, that was a lot of money. I mean, it still is, but like at that time, especially because everything I was earning, I was like pouring into my music career, and I was like, perfect. I had plans. Okay, that's going to cover my EP in the studio, blah, 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 right? So it didn't come through. And I just couldn't for the life of me understand how I had like manifested that experience or how that had come about. And I was just beating myself up, and I was like, how could, I mean, there's red flags, how could I not see the signs? But then also kind of understanding that I know this just happened for a reason. I know something good will come out of this. I just can't see what right now.
Yeah.
And it was in like kind of that week of, I remember I was just like meditating every day, like, divine, give me an answer, because I'm just feeling so horrible about this whole situation and how it's played out. And it wasn't even just the money, it was like the whole business relationship had been lost, and that relationship was very important to me at that time, and very important for my music career at that time. And the idea of brand alchemy came to me in a download in response to my questioning, like, you know, give me an answer as to what I'm supposed to be doing next, like why this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I created the whole brand alchemy system, you know, launched it as a beta, and I had a bunch of clients come like pretty much right away. And I realized that had that situation not happened, I would have not learned the lessons I needed to learn to launch my own business and actually step out and be the face of the business. So it was actually like the best thing that could have happened to me. Yeah.
So perfect. I love that story.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, so just trying to see what questions I haven't asked you. Okay, if you had 1 minute to share your message with the world, what would you say?
Oh man. 1 minute. Well, I I truly believe that we all have a spirit, right? We're not humans. We're not, you know, physical bodies. We are spirits living in a body, having a human experience. And our spirit has a calling, and it has a purpose, and it has a message for us. And you know, I truly believe that, you know, one of my kind of missions, and what I believe my purpose is through, you know, my music and what I share, is to help, you know, individuals connect with that spirit and listen, be able to listen to what that calling is. You know, we all have potential. And for me, I'm like obsessed with understanding and getting to experience my own potential and helping other people do the same. And I think my biggest message is that, you know, don't give up. I guess that sounds so cliche, but like, you know, there is a lot of shit that's going to come up along the journey of discovering how to be in a dance with your spirit and how to co-create with the universe. And I think the biggest thing is not to get dissuaded and not to get burned down by all of the things that happen. Just keep moving through it, because there is literally another side to that. And we all can get to a place where our spirit is thriving and kind of we're operating our life from that paradigm, I guess you could say.
Well, that was a pretty epic message there. So just on the same topic of that, which is a little bit random, what is your superpower, Hannah?
What is my superpower? I think my superpower is taking really big ideas and visions and concepts and grounding it in like reality, in earthly structure, and breaking it down.
Love it, love it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some random questions now. So the first one is, what is something that you do that might be considered weird by others?
There's a few things, but I'll give you the weirdest. Well, I have conversations with my stuffed animals. That's probably the weirdest thing. Like they respond. Well, not all of them. Yes, they respond. I have a few of them, and they have like characters, and they have voices, and they talk, and they say things and come up with some of the most profound wisdom sometimes. But yeah. So I have conversations with them. That's probably pretty weird.
That's it's crazy, but it's awesome. So what fictional character do you most resonate with?
This is good. Fictional character that I most resonate with. Um, so I can tell you who my favorite fictional character is.
Yep.
Which is like I love Lord of the Rings. It's probably my favorite fantasy series or fictional series. And my favorite character is Aragorn. And so he's masculine, so I can't like personally resonate with him, but he's just like my favorite fictional character of all time. I think because I feel like his character brings out like the best in humanity's potential.
Nice.
But I also do love, like, I also love Game of Thrones. So I like Daenerys Targaryen if she had a different ending. And I also really love Sansa Stark. They're characters that female characters that I really loved. So yeah.
And what are they showing you about yourself?
I mean, Daenerys, obviously, it was just like the whole, like, you know, victim turned to like powerhouse, sovereign queen, you know, turning her circumstances and taking command. And obviously, like, that's something that I really loved and like resonated with in her character. And I just thought it was super inspiring. And what I love about Sansa's character, it's interesting because her character, like, a lot of people really hated her character. But it was sort of a similar thing. It was like having her go through such like a victim mentality and just getting bogged down by like so much trauma and all this, and how she turned that around and again became like a very powerful queen and a really you know, a good thinker as well in her own right. And I actually really related to that because I thought that was very human. Like, I thought that was very relatable in terms of like everyday life. Like, people are having journeys just like that in everyday life.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
good. So would you prefer to be a dragon or have a dragon?
Probably have a dragon if I like Daenerys. Yeah, like Dany. Have a dragon.
Is there any reason why?
I mean, I just don't think it would be that pleasant to be a dragon.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I like being human. I do like being human.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you could have lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would you have lunch with?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it might sound like kind of, well, no, that's not a boring answer, but there is a teacher, a spiritual teacher that I resonate with, and I consider him to be my spiritual teacher. His name is David Hawkins. And he wrote the book Power versus Force, letting go, and all of those books. And I've read all of his books, and I just really resonate with the path and the teachings that he taught. And it was interesting actually because so he lived in Sedona, Arizona before he passed in 2012. And one of the draws, like, I actually was just in Sedona a couple weeks ago when I was in the States, and my draw to go there was because of him. And I imagined when I was sitting there in Sedona, I was thinking where he was having lunch and like what his life would have been like being there. So yeah.
That is so cool. Love that. So the last question, Hannah, is there anything I haven't asked that I could have, should have, anything else you'd like to share around?
Not a question, but I actually wanted to share something that was cool, like a cool interaction between me, like you and I.
Yeah.
Which was like, and I feel like I just want to mention this because you were such like a spark in that journey for me, and you've seen, you know, before I kind of stepped into who I am now, and before I stepped into the music and stepped into the business leader and all of that, you know, you kind of witnessed that journey a little bit. And I just have this moment I remember where I think you had done a bit of a reading for me. You had come to my place, and you had said randomly out of the blue, you were like, oh, just like keep an eye out for opportunities to perform, because I really see, you know, you performing this year. And at the time, that was, I think, in 2017, that was like not on my radar at all. But I was like, huh, okay. like I'll keep an eye out. And then that was like literally I think a week later that I got offered the opportunity to perform at a festival, which ended up being my first ever original show. And then that's kind of what like launched me into my music career. So I just thought that story was so cool. And I wanted to share that and also acknowledge you for the role you've played in my life and like my, I guess, story to where I am today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Hannah. That's so beautiful of you to say that. And I have to say that, like I was saying before, I feel like you're just such a beautiful, open-hearted person, that it's like just such a beautiful thing to have crossed paths with you and been able to connect with you deeper. And I mean, you know, we traveled the southeast coast of Australia together, basically, with what we were doing at that point in time. And a lot of tears, a lot of clearings that were done on a lot of different people, and just you know, helping them to find a new way and a new path. And yeah, I feel like after you've had that kind of an experience with somebody, it's kind of hard to how'd you put it, to forget that experience and just remember the awe of like, and just the amount of love and respect that I have for you. So yes, that's why I'm so grateful to have been able to have done this interview with you today. And thank you so much for sharing that. That was really beautiful too. And I got goosies on that one as well. So nice. But yeah, thank you so much, Hannah, for allowing me to interview you and ask you some questions for the
thank you for having
legacy.
me.
It's an honor to have been able to interview you. And yeah, so if anyone wants to follow you, how do they get in contact with you? How do they find
good question
you?
Well, I mean, I'm on Spotify, so if you have Spotify or Apple Music, you can find me, Hannah Anna. And yeah, I would say just connect with me on Facebook, because I've got Brand Alchemy, which is my one business. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and then I've got Hannah Anna, which is my music, which I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, connect with me on socials, on Facebook. And
awesome. Thank you again, Hannah. Much love to you.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
Karina.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Bye.
Bye.